Does everybody understand that example? And like I said, when you realize that you're not appropriately focused on your objective, meaning you notice that you're either thinking, saying, or doing something that is inconsistent with what you're trying to accomplish, you deliberately refocus your attention on the object of your goal. Just do the best you can. Okay, so basically, like I said, this whole section, this last section, is giving you steps and techniques for evolving into a professional trader's mindset. So what you want to do is you want to resolve. In other words, say to yourself, my desire is to be a certain way so that I can make a consistent income from my trading, something I can rely on. So I resolve to stop analyzing or trying to figure out if the current opportunity to put on a trade is going to work. Resolve to stop doing that. And when you find yourself doing it, consciously refocus your thoughts that analyzing is not beneficial in any way. As a passive technical trader, you are dependent on the behavior of the traders to make your trade a winner. And you are using a mathematical formula or price pattern to predict what they will do. Math formulas or price patterns don't know the intentions, objectives, or reasons why the individual traders who are capable of moving prices behave the way they do. As a result, you will almost never know the real reason why any particular trade worked or not. There's nothing to analyze. There's just nothing to analyze. Nothing. There was back when I was in commercial casualty sales, there was a sales course that I bought by Zig Ziglar. Everybody know who Zig Ziglar is? Okay. And there was a part of this sales course where Zig Ziglar was talking about the exact right moment to ask a closing question to close a sale. And he said he's trying to get people to understand when that right moment is. And when you know where you're at that right moment, Zig Ziglar paused and there was silence, and then he screamed, "Shut up!" He screamed out much louder than that. "Shut up. The first person who talks loses." In other words, when you ask that closing question as a salesman, shut up and don't say a word, because if he said the first one who talks loses, and that was the truth. That worked. I found when I felt compelled to talk before he did, I didn't get the sale. And when I was able to keep my mouth shut and let them talk first, I did. What I'm saying to you is that when you get a signal from your methodology, stop thinking! There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to think about. Do you understand why I said that? Just put on the trade. There's absolutely nothing to think about. Just put the trade on. So you resolve to stop analyzing, okay? I resolve. I'm not going to analyze anymore. When I get a signal, I'm going to stop thinking. Resolve to learn the skill of trading without fear. In other words, manage your expectations by discarding the trade-by-trade approach in favor of a series of trades approach. This is what we've been talking about for probably the last half an hour. The pitfalls of a trade-by-trade perspective. Anything you do for any reason could result in a winning trade. The problem is many of the things that you could do that results in a winning trade could reinforce trading behaviors that could lead to a catastrophic loss. Losing streaks can easily cause one's attitude to deteriorate into a negative spiral when you trade in a trade-by-trade perspective. From a trade-by-trade perspective, you are making a choice to pick what you think is an edge out of all the other possible trades you could have picked. In essence, you are saying, I am picking this trade because I think it's going to work. When you trade in a trade-by-trade perspective, you can't help but think you know what's going to happen next because you are picking trades that you think are going to work. And therefore, your expectations automatically will not be in line with the realities of the market from its perspective. And therefore will have the potential to define and interpret market information in a threatening way, therefore causing your perception of that information to be all out of whack, and you're going to end up creating the very things you want to avoid, which is lose and make money, or lose and be wrong. You guys with me on this?
Yes.
The reality is, at a rational level, you don't know if any trade is going to work because you never know for sure who's participating and what their intent is. You're guessing. See, you know what traders is? An educated guess. This is what we do as traders. Edge. Got an edge. You-cated. Guess. That means probabilities. You're making an educated guess. You've got the probabilities in your favor. That's all we're doing here. With a specific expectation of the outcome, any market information that doesn't conform to what you expect will be perceived as threatening. You will be trading with fear. If you win, you think you're right, and if you lose, you think you're wrong. In either case, you'll be setting yourself up to make a trading error on the next trade. Just think about what I just said. Regardless of what happens, if you're right, or if you're wrong, in either case, you're setting yourself up to make a trading error on the next trade. Because our minds have the natural tendency to connect the past with the present. If the trade was a winner, in other words, if you're trading in a trade-by-trade perspective, and you think you were right because you won, in other words, whatever reason you use, the market seemed to validate that reason. We know now that that just is not the case. If the trade was a winner, we're susceptible to, on the next trade, not predefining the risk. Well, the last one was a winner. I knew for that reason. I knew what was happening. Therefore, the risk doesn't exist. Not letting ourselves get stopped out of a loser. Jumping the gun because you're anticipating the signal. Over trading our position size. Not booking any profits because you think it's going to go on forever. Is this making sense to everybody? If the trade was a loser, you're susceptible to not predefining the risk because you're going to gather all the information that's necessary to make sure it's not going to be a loser this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't be putting it on. Right? You're going to analyze it to death. You're going to hesitate, get in late, or not get in at all. Take profits too soon, or revenge trading by not booking any profits. In other words, whatever the market's given you ain't enough. I got to have more. The last trade was a loser. I got to have more. The benefits of a series of trades perspective. You know exactly what behaviors serve your purpose and what behaviors do not. You cannot trade in a series of trades perspective with a trading plan and not know exactly what behaviors will serve your purpose and what behaviors will not. Because everything's planned out. You're either following your plan or you're not. But the point is, everything is planned. You are not picking individual trades, therefore, no one trade has any more or any less significance than the other. The next trade, this trade, they're all just trades. None of them have any more or any less significance. You will gain a sense of freedom to flow in and out of your trades without conflict because you are not living or dying on the outcome of any particular trade. By reducing the number of variables, you will be learning what works and what doesn't. By truly accepting that the outcome of this trade could be different than whatever happened the last time, you are positively managing your expectations. Now think about what I just said. By truly accepting. What does it mean to truly accept? It means that there's no other part of your identity or consciousness that is in conflict with accepting the fact, genuinely accepting the fact, that this trade could have a different outcome than the last one. If the last trade was a winner, it means that this trade could have a different outcome. It could be a loser. If the last trade was a loser, it means that this trade could have a different outcome. It could be a winner. You see, our minds don't feel like there's anything wrong with you by thinking in the previous way, because our minds are wired to think that way. Our minds are literally wired to connect the two. That's why it's so difficult for many people to break through into this ability to think in probabilities and to break into this threshold of consistency is because we're working in some cases against natural wiring. It is natural for our minds to say, if this is what happened the last time, if the circumstances are identical or similar this time, then the same thing is going to happen. What I'm saying to you is that you have to step into an exercise where you consciously disconnect the two. In other words, your whole purpose is to disconnect this now moment from what happened the last time. Because there is no connection. The reality is there's no connection. That's the truth. You just can't let your mind think that there is a connection. There is no connection between between the outcome of this now moment opportunity with what happened the last time, even though the variables that are getting you into this trade or identifying this opportunity are identical. That creates quite a paradox for our brains, okay? That's why people can understand the nature of probabilities. They can understand them, but they can't function from that perspective. You have to train your mind to function from that perspective. That's what separates everyone from the pros. Okay? You have to train your mind to disconnect. Don't let yourself think that there's any connection between now and what happened the last time. Because the reality is there is none. There really isn't. I don't care how identical it looks. You can use the same mathematical formulas and criteria in those formulas that apply to market data and come up with these patterns, but I guarantee you the traders that are operating in the market now are not the same traders, identically at least not the same traders as the ones that operated the last time. Therefore, there's no possible way that there could be a connection between now and then. There's just no possible way. When you disconnect, when you make that disconnection, okay, you won't perceive market information as threatening. You'll eliminate the potential to make a trading error, and you will be aspiring to trade without fear in a carefree state of mind. Now that you understand that your technical methodology does not tell you what will happen next on a trade-by-trade basis, in this section, I will take you through a step-by-step process that will integrate the principles of consistency as a functional part of your trading personality. Up to this point, we've talked about how we get into this mindset, about resolving to think in certain ways, but this is learning how to disconnect. In other words, learning how to circumvent that natural mechanism in our mind that automatically connects things, connects similar events, this now moment opportunity, this now moment event with something that's in our mind as a memory. If there's enough, if there's enough similarity there, it'll tap us into a state of mind that's identical to our memories as opposed to what might be available in the now moment, which may be very different than very different than what we think that it is. I mean, that's where we have relationship problems, communication problems. It's like it's this connect mechanism really does cause us a lot of problems. It really does, because in many cases, a lot of the pain and heartache that we feel in our lives is not connected at all with what's really happening in that moment, but you wouldn't be able to convince ourselves, or no one would be able to convince us, or wouldn't be able to convince ourselves that what we weren't experiencing in that moment wasn't real, because what we were experiencing was the energy. It was the fear, the confidence, the dissatisfaction, the betrayal. The energy of it is real, that you can't say this is not what's happening. But the problem is that the interpretation of the information that tapped us into the state of mind and the connection that our mind automatically made from this now moment to some memory in the past could be, like I said, completely erroneous. When you look at the very nature of the universe and the way it exists, there is no possible way that any moment could ever duplicate itself. No two moments are ever alike, ever, and could never be. Because if you just look at it, if you look at physical reality, it's constructed of atoms and molecules, and those atoms and molecules are in constant motion. They are in constant motion. For two moments to ever duplicate themselves, it means that all the atoms of all the molecules would have to be in the exact same spot they were in some previous moment right now. And that ain't going to happen. So when you really get right down to it, every moment is really unique. Every moment in the environment is really unique. But our minds don't process information that way. Every moment in the market is genuinely and truly unique. But our minds don't process it that way. We have to train our minds to process it that way if we want to make ourselves the casino. If we want to put ourselves in the situation where we are the casino, then we got to get our minds to process information in a different way. Richard had a comment that I thought was really good.
We tend to associate with a winning trade or a losing trade. That when we do suffer a loss, we tend to think of ourselves as a loser, instead of that is just a trade that turned out a loss.
Right.
And when we do get a winning trade, we think, well, I'm a winner. So you get caught up in the emotion of it instead of looking at it, that was a bad trade, this was a good trade. It has nothing to do with whether or not you're a winner or a loser.
Richard, have you ever played the slots?
No.
Never?
Well, yes.
Why couldn't you say?
Yes,
go ahead.
Not anymore because
no,
I understand.
No, I didn't say, no. Did I say, have you ever played the slots?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When the tumblers didn't come up with any kind of a jackpot, did you think of yourself as a loser?
No. Why? Because I know that the slot machine is rigged against me.
Well, okay, but did you think there's any possibility of ever winning?
Absolutely, because I did get some. But I eventually ended up with an empty pocket.
But in other words, you walked into it with the belief that on any particular time that you pushed the button that there was a random outcome.
Correct.
You knew that, right? And so therefore you didn't think of yourself as a loser.
Correct.
Have you ever thought of yourself as a loser when you had a losing trade?
Yes.
And what would be the reason?
Because I lost.
No, because you didn't believe that there was a random outcome, right? If someone told you from the very beginning that whatever outcomes that you experienced from any methodology that you picked to define an edge were random, would you be thinking about this completely differently?
It makes a big difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. So in other words, you wouldn't have the same emotional problems that you might have with the kind of errors and everything else that goes along with trading with fear if someone would have just said to you, you know what, there's a random outcome. Even though it's a pattern and it doesn't make sense and it creates a paradox for our minds, we got a pattern that produces a random outcome. If you believe that there was a random outcome, where would the emotions come from?
They would certainly diminish, if not
Well, they
go
wouldn't
away.
be. I don't think they'd be anywhere at all, would they?
Go away, yes.
No, I'm saying if you just right from the very start, what would you have to associate with? If it's a random outcome, then you know that you're not wrong, right?
Correct.
So there wouldn't be anything to associate the outcome with any kind of interpretation that could end up causing you to feel some sort of emotional pain.
You're right.
All we're trying to do is get to that place now. Even though you've had all this backlog of experience telling you otherwise, that's where we want to get to. How are we going to get there? We're going to create an exercise. Remember the 5-mile rule? Okay, we're going to do the 5-mile rule in a trading exercise. Why are we going to do the exercise? You remember, we have to have clarity of intent. What is our desire? Our desire is to become a consistently successful trader, one where I can generate an income I can rely on. Okay? And so we are going to actually trade for a new reason. We're going to stay focused in the process of trading as opposed to the outcome. The typical trader is obsessed with the outcome of a trade. The professional trader is focused in the process of trading and letting the outcomes take care of themselves. As a matter of fact, the best traders that I've ever encountered love the process of trading. The typical trader, on the other hand, either has no awareness of the actual process of trading or really doesn't like the process of trading, but they're addicted to or obsessed with the outcome. So you have to make up your mind, and everyone in this room at some point in their lives, for some reason, has decided to make up their mind about something, and when you have, you got results. I know everyone has had that experience. You've made up your mind with so much desire, so much clarity of intent, and with absolute sincerity that you got the desired result. So I'm saying that if you make up your mind to trade for a new reason, the reason is the acquisition of skills as opposed to the outcome or how much money you're making, you will acquire those skills, and then you'll find that the outcomes just take care of themselves. If you've paper traded or tested your methodology to the point where you have confidence that you have something that can generate consistent results, then you can do this exercise. If you haven't, then you're going to have to do that first. You're going to have to plan your trades. In other words, you're going to have to take your methodology and determine a given set of rigid variables, because what we're going to do is set up a trading exercise with just a simple 25 trade or 20 trade sample size. In other words, what you're going to say is that I am willing to invest in the development of these skills, the skill of learning to trade without fear, learning to think in probabilities. Because when you learn to think in probabilities, the fear will go away. And so what I essentially have to do is convince myself. I have to purposefully step into an experience where I am convinced, where I literally convince myself that these principles are true. Now, they sound true to you. They might resonate as the truth. But you have to keep in mind that you might have a backlog of any number of experiences that would support beliefs that would argue otherwise. Because I could say to you that if I set up or you set up an exercise where you said, okay, I've got a particular set of variables that when they appear in the market, that is my edge, and that my edge will produce, let's say, even 60% winning trades. And you don't even have to have 60%. You can have 50% and still make consistent money. As long as what you have to risk to find out if it works is, a third or a half of what you normally get when the trade does work in terms of profits. But if we set this exercise up so that there's no wiggle room, there is no wiggle room. What I mean by wiggle room is that the variables, the criteria that you use are absolutely rigid, black and white. They're either present or they are not. That's the only decision you have to make. In other words, if you do it in terms of lights, whatever lights you're going to use, whatever time frame, the lights you're going to use in whatever time frame, they are either on or they're not. And if they're on, you are obligated to take the trade. And what you're going to say to yourself is that in this whatever criteria or plan that you set up is, I am not going to take just the next trade. I am going to take the next 20 trades. You are committing yourself to taking the next 20 trades of the occurrence of your edge.